Hi, my name is Kristen Thomas, and I am the manager of community here at Sucuri, and I will be your moderator. We do have a few housekeeping items to go over before we begin today's presentation. First, we ask that you please ask questions. While the presentation is happening, if you think of a really important question, go ahead and post it to the Q&A box right away so you don't forget. Just to note that we will only answer the questions during the Q&A portion of the presentation. Please keep questions as concise as possible, focused on the subject of website security. We'll do our best to answer as many questions during the portion of the webinar, but not to worry, we will follow up with the answers to any unanswered questions in the following days. Second, at the end of the webinar, a brief survey will open up on your screen. We ask that you take a moment to complete it so we can learn more about you and continue to offer you meaningful content. We do plan to make a video of the presentation available to all who registered. You can expect a follow-up email in a couple of days with a link to the video and a copy of the presentation slides. Lastly, as a thank you for joining in today's live webinar, we are extending 20% off of any of our security solutions until Friday. Please use the code that you see on the screen now, Hacked Report Q1. We have our chat representatives that are standing by to help you with your order immediately. Now I'm going to hand it off to Tony and Daniel.
Hey guys, how are you? My name is Tony Perez. Some of you guys remember me from previous webinars where we talked about the impacts of compromises and how hacks happen. And with me today I have our founder and my business partner and friend Daniel Sid.
Hey guys.
I want everybody to welcome him. This is his first public speaking in a while, and we're not even public. We're in private, just you and I. So this is progress, my friend. And he's going to be kind of walking us through some of the data that we've collected and analyzed over the first quarter. And I think this is really exciting. We kind of tried this back in 2012 and didn't get much momentum, but then now we're kind of ready. We're positioned better. We have better telemetry data to be able to work with. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to you, Daniel, to kind of start walking us through this.
Sure. Hey guys, thanks for joining us here on our first Hackers Report webinar.
Yeah.
I'm personally really excited to be here and sharing these stats, which is based on the years of work that our team have been doing for the last few years. And I'm mostly a behind-the-scenes type of guy. This is my first webinar, so if I screw up, when I screw up, just be nice to me. Tony will help me. And
we promise not to get physical in this interaction.
No. And it's probably going to be my last webinar, but the same. Anyway, so I'll not duplicate what we said in the document. So if you haven't read, please read it after we finish here. The link is over there in your slide. But what we'll try to do is share the important takeaways and insights from what we learned through this data and going through this data.
And I think the pieces that we feel are the most important for website owners. I mean, I think that it's important that they get into the document and read the details. They'll pull their own insights from that. Yeah. But this is specifically the things that we felt were high level enough and that things that they can make some action from it. And maybe some of our own opinions and thoughts.
Yes. Right? And we'll give some homework at the end.
You know people don't like homework, right?
Everybody likes homework. Anyway, so to get started, first I want to clarify what these reports are about. Here at Sucuri, we do incident response for thousands of websites every single month. And incident response is just a fancy term for website cleanups. Most of our sites come to us when they are infected. They're blacklisted, they have spam SEO, they have whatever. And they come to us for help. So this data is based on these sites. Yeah. And we work across all major website CMSs, web servers, industry types, website types. And we have a really good visibility to what's really happening on the overall market share of compromised sites. And that's why we decided to share this report, is to help educate webmasters to what's really going on.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, right, is that this telemetry is specific based on our audience and the data that we've collected. It doesn't necessarily sync up one-to-one with maybe the market share and how the platform fits within the larger scheme of the internet. But it is enough data that provides us good potential correlation data that says, this is interesting, what's going on, why is this happening, and provide some thoughts around that.
And hopefully, when you look at the data between the compromised sites, you see the similarities. Yeah. What behaviors all these webmasters did to cause their site to be hacked.
It's true.
And if you don't follow them, you'll probably be in a good place security-wise.
And I think that a lot of emphasis will be placed around open source CMSs, right? Like the Drupals of the world, the Magentos, the WordPresses, maybe the Joomlas.
Yes.
And they'll probably be able to take the most from this.
Absolutely. And before I start, I want to give credit where credit's due. This is our remediation group. And these are the guys that do the hundreds of cleanups every single day. They work 24/7 cleaning up sites for you guys.
And I think the picture's a little misleading, right? They actually do like their job. You know what I mean?
They're smiling there.
They're smiling, yeah. Okay, so tell us a little bit about the remediation team. How are they configured?
The remediation team is kind of divided in two main groups. One are the researchers, the other are the incident responders that actually go to your site and clean it up. And they work side by side, analyze new malware trends, analyze new issues, and make sure that together we can clean the websites as fast as possible and in a way that it won't be reinfected after.
Got it. So you got this incident response team that they're working with the customers day to day, engaging with them, collaborating, fixing the security issues, whether it's infections or not. And then they kind of work hand in hand with the researchers, and together they kind of stay ahead of the emerging threats, and kind of drives the kind of information that we've collected, as well as the kind of information that we disseminate via things like our blog and social, kind of all that malware research and labs.
Okay. If you haven't read our blog, check it out.
Yeah, for
it
sure.
has a lot of the insights that we've been learning through this journey the last few years.
Perfect.
So now we're ready to get started. The first number that I want to point out is that we clean up thousands of websites every month. During the first quarter of the year, we cleaned around 15,000 sites, but we only took 11,000 of them that you have enough data, enough organized data that we could go deep to see what was going on during the time of the compromise. And that's where these numbers come from. That 78% of all the compromised sites we work on were using WordPress. 14% were running Joomla. 5% Magento, 2% Drupal. That's an interesting number to think about. 78% WordPress, 14% Joomla, 5% Magento, 2% Drupal. I want you to think about these numbers because I want to compare them to the overall market share of CMSs. You see, when we look at the data provided by Buildwith, WordPress has around 50% of the market. Drupal has 6, Blogger 4, Joomla has 4. Even if you look at WT Tech, which are other companies that track CMS users and things like that, they give WordPress at 58%, Joomla at 6, Drupal at 4. But when you compare these numbers with the overall market share of compromised sites, WordPress has 70-something%. Joomla has 16.
Yeah. It doesn't seem to make sense, right? You have, your market shares are fundamentally different than the types of the distribution that we're finding in our telemetry data of people that are coming to us for support.
We would expect them to match,
Similar, close.
unless one CMS is more insecure than the other. So does this data tell us that maybe WordPress is more insecure than the others, and that Joomla is probably the most insecure of all? That we have 2 times the data in our compromised sites than we have in the overall market share.
I'm going to keep an open mind on this one, right? I want to see kind of where you're going with this.
I would say that maybe yes. I think they are more insecure. That Joomla and WordPress are more insecure than they're supposed to be.
Okay.
But is that really true? Because insecurity is a very generic term, right?
Yeah.
What's really insecure? When you look at the core code of WordPress, Joomla, Drupal, they are really, really secure. The developers behind these platforms really know about security, and they're responsive, and they patch things quickly. Their thought and mindset is around security a lot of times. Like what they do makes a lot of sense. So why would that happen, And what I want to say is that generally what adds the insecurity is not the core of the CMS. You don't see the security WordPress core, for example, in Joomla core. I think the problem is at a higher level, a bit higher level, is how the websites are being deployed, is how they're being managed, and how people extend the CMS.
Okay. So I see where you're going with this. I think you had a lot of people on the webinar right now kind of holding their breath saying, what did he just say?
I can see
But I think I can see you already on Twitter bashing us saying, these guys. But I think I kind of understand where you're going with it now. I think what you're trying to say is that from a holistic standpoint, insecurity doesn't necessarily mean development or web administration, but as a whole, there's a problem, right? Because I think that from a core perspective and from a development perspective and the platform development process, so there is security and a lot of emphasis on security, and the platforms themselves are secure. But because of the way it either gets distributed, the way it gets managed, the way it gets maintained, the way it's communicated and marketed to audiences, that makes the platform insecure. And this actually becomes really interesting when you look at different platforms, like for instance, say WordPress and the market that they target predominantly a lot of DIYers, a lot of end users. It's about quickly get up and running, and they have this infamous 5-minute install, right? And that kind of talks to your point specifically. The messaging, the marketing specifically around platforms is, hey, get online quick, and you continue to see open source kind of change the landscape of online websites.
Yeah, absolutely. And that goes to what Tony was saying. John Watson from CloudProx team, he tweeted something very interesting. He's saying, all I'm saying that it takes a lot longer than the famous 5-minute install to install WordPress properly. And by that, I mean harder. That goes to what you're saying, is that
for sure.
WordPress is secure. But to deploy WordPress securely, it takes a lot longer.
Yeah, and you can't draw a line, right? You can't say, oh, from a development standpoint, I'm set, I'm secure. The rest is on you and the end user, right? As communities, regardless of what platform you have, we have a responsibility to the larger ecosystem, right? And we have to ensure that security applies across the entire stack. So when we're communicating, it's not about it's a 5-minute install, but it's a continuous process. But just think about it.
The code is a small piece of the overall.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love 140 characters, right? They kind of really restrict you and allow you to kind of get a point across.
You have to get a point across, exactly. And that moves us to the second number that I want to share. Out of all the websites we work on, 77% WordPress. Out of those WordPress sites, for example, 56% of them were outdated. And that's the core of WordPress outdated. On Joomla was 85%. Magento, 97%. Drupal, 81%. That's a lot of outdated sites that
this is a really interesting insight. When I first saw this and we were kind of talking about it, it kind of makes you wonder what's happening, right? Because if WordPress, for instance, where we have the most telemetry data for, still runs at about 56 to 60% out of date.
They have auto updates.
They have auto updates.
Forced updates.
Forced updates.
And they just really simple one-click updates.
Absolutely. They've placed a lot of emphasis on backwards compatibility compared to some of the other platforms, and their process for updating is a lot easier. You have a lot of managed host environments, a lot of hosts are quickly to patch, and even then, that made up 77% of the customers or the websites that came through our environment infected still suffer at 60%. It begs the question, what happens with some of the other platforms, especially when you think about things like Magento and Drupal that target fundamentally different audiences. Drupal, for instance, we see them a lot in the enterprise and large organizations. What do we have in those organizations? We have very stringent security governance that dictates how things get into production, right? If we're suffering at this scale, it makes you wonder what are the real impacts that we can be making to address the problem.
Yeah. And when I look at these numbers, what it really tells me is that we're really bad at website management.
Yeah.
Because the easiest part of your website management, if you have 10 sites, the easiest thing to do on your site, of everything you can be doing, is just update. Because the update process is simple. Just click update. For most of them, it's simple. Yeah. And we're still not doing that most of the time.
Well, and it kind of goes to what I was saying, right? I mean, in security or in large organizations, we understand that the importance of patch management, vulnerability management, right? How do we convey this to the end users? And that's the real challenge. And it's easy for us from a development standpoint. Well, just update this. Well, how do you tell that to the end user that has a website that fully depends on their commerce?
Doesn't want that to break.
And doesn't want to break.
If it's working, don't touch it.
And you know how they say, like, oh, less than 1% of the sites break. But are you okay with that one collateral, that small percentage? I can assure you that most people don't want to be that percentage.
So I want to go back to our question. We asked about, for example, is WordPress or the Joomla core more insecure?
Okay.
Because percentage-wise, they have a lot more in the compromised sites
right
back than it has on the other overall market share. And I would say that the answer is no, the core is not insecure. But are they being used insecurely? This data tells us yes. Yeah. People are using their websites and they're managing their websites in insecure ways.
It kind of goes to the root cause of what's happening and why websites are getting infected.
And outdated CMSs, they're not the problem. They're just the consequence, the results of bad website management. Again, people are not managing their sites properly. That's why we see so many outdated. That's why they don't take security on any part of the site's life cycle, which starts with the deployment, management, and extending it.
Yeah, you kind of mentioned a very interesting point here, right? Are the results of lack of asset management, right? A lot of organizations just don't have some kind of inventory list or understand what they have. I've talked to large organizations, as have you, where this is, hey, we'd love to help you. How many websites do you have? And they're like, I have no idea. I really have no idea what I have. how is an organization meant to design it? And these are organizations with good governance in place. How is the everyday website owner supposed to do that? And then, it's one of those things we always like to say in security, right? You can't secure what you don't know you have. But then we start looking at the applications themselves and the extensibility around plugins and modules and components, and we start thinking, okay, well, we haven't even moved into that yet. We've only been talking about the core of the application. What happens when we look at the extensibility of the application?
That's next, and that's even scary. When I look at these numbers, and that's the other number I really want to show you guys, is that out of the overall number of WordPress, that's just deep down to WordPress. When you look at the WordPress, and you look at outdated sites, 25% were split in just 3 plugins: Tintam, Gravity Slider, and Gravity Forms. Still about 77% of all compromised sites are running Tintam.
Yeah, that's crazy, right?
How is that possible?
That's over 40 years now.
Was patched 4
and it still contributes.
ago.
And I think that the important thing to emphasize here is that it's not that these plugins are out of date, but these are out of date plugins that have known vulnerabilities. Out of date, patching is designed to address a number of things, including vulnerabilities. But these are 25% of them had an out of date, vulnerable version of either the script or the plugins, right?
And Tintam was patched 4 years ago. That was spread everywhere. There's even plugins to allow you to find. We warn every other companies warning about Tintam. And still people have outdated it.
Well, and we have a challenge here. We just talked about the challenges at the core of the application. Now we look at some of these scripts, the Rev Slider, Gravity Forms, right? Rev Slider, for instance, is one of those plugins that gets embedded.
2 years ago.
Yeah, but it was 2 years ago, but it was embedded within themes and frameworks. Same as Tintam, how many organizations come to us, we get a compromise, this is the vector, and they're like, oh, I didn't even know I had it.
And the developers of Gravity Form, Rev Slider, they did everything right. They patched it quickly, they warned all the users, they posted about it in their blogs, we post in our blogs about it, we told everyone to patch, and still users are not listening. But are they not listening, or they really don't know?
Well, I think it's a combination of things, right? I think they don't know, or maybe it's an instance like, for instance, Gravity Forms. I spent a lot of time talking to Carl Hancock, the owner of Gravity Forms, and when he told me, he's like, what are we supposed to do as an organization? We do everything we can to get the information out to the website owners, but what if they're not on a part of our maintenance plan? At what point as a business do they say, hey, we just give it away for free, but then what does that do with the economics of your business where you depend on the sustainability license, but people don't want to pay for that? It's a big challenge, and I think organizations have to start looking at ulterior technologies to address this.
At the end, the security of your website is
your responsibility.
It's not anybody else.
I think a classic example of this is maybe in e-commerce, right? A lot of organizations misinterpret what PCI means, and if you, for instance, have an e-commerce, or we have an e-commerce issue, and credit cards get stolen, the Visa, the MasterCards are going to penalize us, not our service providers.
Oh, yeah. It's your responsibility. And that goes back to how do we fix this website management problem? There's a lot of things we can be doing. But I want to start with something simple, and that's going to be the homework for the day.
Okay.
Just a little touch. Because a lot of these issues happen because I think people don't know what they have in their sites, what sites they have, and what's going on in their environment. So to start, I really would like for us to create an asset list with all your sites.
It's pretty simple, right?
How many sites do you have?
Yep.
Simple spreadsheet. You list all the sites you have one by one. Go to your GoDaddy Namecheap, get all your domains, list all of them. Which ones are currently active? Which ones should be active? Which ones are still using? List there. Which ones should not be pointing anywhere? List there. And then you go to the second step. You list all the necessary plugins and modules that you need to be running on each one. Which ones I really need to be running right now? And you add your spreadsheet. And then you go a little bit deeper. You talk about who is supposed to have access to each one of the sites. Site 1 should be these 2 users. Should be developer, administrator. Just list each one of them. And after you do that, you don't do. You remove everything else that you don't need.
I just want to caveat, please back up, right? The last thing we want is people coming to us and saying, I removed everything because you said it, and then they deleted data that they needed.
So, but you remove every test account. I don't want to see any test plugins. Okay. I don't want to see any demo sites or test sites, especially
which happens all the time, right?
Happens all the time.
And I think that's by design for hosts. They allow you to create an account, multiple sites, and people just install whatever they want. And it happens all the time. Cross-site contamination, a lot of lateral movement within the account. It's a challenge.
And after that, what you do, you upgrade everything that's left. All the plugins, all the sites, and you repeat every month.
Yeah.
Microsoft has an interesting concept. Every second Tuesday of the month, they do the patch Tuesday. Every Windows administrator knows Patch Tuesday, I have to patch. It's becoming this process. They know when this patch will be available, they have to patch. So maybe we can create this Patch Tuesday for websites, or the last Friday of the month for websites, where you go to your asset list, your inventory, you add any new sites that you created, you add any new plugin. If a developer left your company, you remove the developer from there and go remove from the website.
I think this is really
and you update everything that's left.
I think this is a really interesting idea.
That's a very, very simple way to start fixing the website management problem. There's a lot more stuff to do, don't get me wrong. Maybe on the next webinars, we'll keep going deeper and deeper and keep what you do. But I just want to see this simple stuff.
And I think one of the things this would allow is for not just from the basic maintenance, but say an organization partnered with an agency, or maybe they partner with a service provider like a maintain.com or something like that, that allows them to manage the environment. They can communicate with them and say, hey, this is what I have. Right now, a lot of organizations will go to these service providers and they'll say, hey, I just take care of it, but they have no visibility. What should be active? What shouldn't be active? What should they be maintaining?
If you are an agency provider that you manage your client site, you have to get to every site that you manage. I hope you do. And if you do monitor on your sites, that's the perfect time to add all your sites to your monitor, to make sure you're being alerted for any issue or any of them, both uptime and security issues. Because I know most of you have more than one site. We see that from our own clients. The majority of them have at least a dozen domains.
Yeah,
some disabled, some enabled, some are just dashed, and a very few they really care about. But guess which ones always get hacked first? Is the one that they forgot about.
Oh yeah, for sure. And what happens if they don't do this? What happens if they don't do this? I mean, what are the implications of this?
Then we move to the next stage. It's the malware family distribution. Your website gets hacked and it gets injected with malware. And I want to talk about the first one here, is backdoors. Almost 70% of every site you clean has a backdoor of some kind injected in it. And you know, when we go deep analyze these backdoors and we find the command control that the attackers are using, we analyze, then we see they have this list of all their sites they hacked. Site 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they have how to access the backdoor. Backdoor 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, how to access
So what you're telling me is that the attackers are actually implementing good asset management, good website management practices.
Their sites they own, because when they hack a site, they use this term, they own their sites. So they manage their sites, they own really well. And their asset list is kind of nice. They have the site, the host, the PHP version, the Apache version,
that's really
the
nice.
plugins installed, the
really
users.
Nice.
They do everything. On an infection last year on Joomla, we were seeing attacks that were hacking the site to the vulnerability and patching the site for you.
That's really nice.
You know why? Because they own the site and they want to keep their property to themselves. They don't want anyone else to hack.
You know what it reminds me of is like when you have a little brother and you beat up on your brother, and somebody else tries to go beat up on your brother, like, whoa.
I know.
This is my little brother. I beat him up, not you. Yeah, same exact thing. I get it.
Oh yeah, so if you don't do the proper management of your site and the asset management, the attackers will do for you. But what they'll do is that they'll inject whatever they want. They'll inject backdoor, is the first one. Then 60% have malware, which is a drive-by downloads, that try to compromise your visitors. Or spam SEO, which is actually the one I want to talk about now. Is that this number has been growing year over year over year. Yeah. We are seeing more and more sites with spam SEO. And that's one of the things that don't really affect your users. Your users probably never notice. Right. You probably never notice until you go to Google and search for your site and you find Viagra, Cialis, Nike shoes, online casinos.
I think one of the biggest drivers for spam SEO was PharmaHack back in the days. You know,
that's how it started.
Yeah, about 3 years ago, there was a good study done by a university. I forgot their name, but they estimated that the pharmaceutical kind of affiliate program generated close to $20 to $30 million a year for this space because it was all impression based, and so there was a lot of incentive for black hats to be able to go in and in fact. What's actually really curious about this is that when you look at the statistics around blacklists, whether it's AVs or search engines, this isn't accounted for. The only thing they account for are the things that have a nefarious effect on the end user, or because they're concerned about the endpoint.
Because all these blacklists, they care about the endpoint. Yeah. So when you go to visit a site, if the site has a chance of compromising you, then they might blacklist the site. But if it's just spam SEO, they won't affect you as a visitor, they do not care. However, Google, Bing, and all the major search engines, they will see the SEO. And that will hurt you quite a bit.
Unlike some of the other infection types that affect the end user, like you were saying, spam SEO is one of those things that affects the business owner and the webmaster, right? Because this is, it'll affect your search rankings, your search engine result pages. You'll lose ranking, and you'll lose your domain authority and your page rank and stuff like that. And it has an adverse effect on them economically and potentially in other ways as well.
And most of them are actually really hard to detect because they're conditional injections where they only display the spam when it's coming from Google or it's coming from Bing. If you visit and you do a view source, oh, looks good. I think it's a mistake.
Yeah. It's always a mistake. Yeah.
But when you actually go to Google Master Tools and you check your site, oh, it's all this stuff coming on. What's going on?
Because they're targeting Google. Yeah. And it's actually interesting. So we've seen spam SEO grow, but we've actually seen the inverse of that with other platforms or other infection types like this.
Defacements.
Yeah.
Defacements are actually one thing that we're seeing going on. 5 to 10 years ago, I remember every time I saw a site was hacked, the hackers would add defacement. I just hacked your site. Your security sucks. Yeah. That's the type of message you do. But now we rarely see that anymore. And the main reason I think is that before, a lot of the hacking was just for political, personal reasons. I want to show off my skills that I hacked forever.
You're not talking from experience, right?
No.
Oh, okay.
But now it's all about money. Financial,
yes. And I think that's exactly right. If we think back maybe 5 to 10 years, it was just about the environment was fundamentally different, right? Now we have things like booter services. Now we have malware as a service. The economics in the industry are much higher, so there's incentive to go after this stuff.
Yes. And especially because the other key point is the defacements. They actually tell the webmaster that they've been hacked.
That's exactly right.
As soon as they visit their site, they see they got hacked, they're going to clean it up.
Yeah.
Now, when you look at spam SEO, they're trying to hide from the webmasters. A lot of the new drive-by downloads, they actually try to hide from the webmasters.
Think about advertising and how difficult that is to detect, where you don't necessarily compromise the website, but you distribute it via an ad that they're using because it's a way for them to generate revenue, but it's impossible to replicate in some instances.
Their goal is to maximize the time they can stay on your site and also maximize what they can do. For example, if you look at these numbers on the malware trends year over year, you see that they don't add up to 100%. It means that when someone hacks your site and injects spam SEO, he will not just inject spam SEO. He also use it for phishing, for mailer, maybe to DDoS others.
Yeah. That's interesting. So it's not mutually exclusive, right? So just because you have a backdoor doesn't mean you don't have phishing or doesn't mean that you have SEO spam. In fact, it's the inverse of that, right? Where you can actually expect 70% of websites to have a backdoor that allow them to bypass your controls while still distributing malware or potentially being used to phish and spear phishing attempts to get entry to an environment or steal some kind of information. They kind of like combine all this information together, right?
Because not only these bad guys, they do the proper asset management, they also really utilize their resources. So if they own a resource, they're going to really fully utilize that. And that's what this number tells us. And as you can see, year over year, things has been pretty consistent.
Yeah. Well, in some areas, right? Like for instance, if we look at spam SEO, we kind of see some growth there, and actually the biggest growth has occurred there over the past few years, and I think that talks to the potential economic return. But we've also seen the reverse of that happening on the defacements, but everything else has been pretty consistent. In fact, malware could actually be looked to be increasing from 40% to close to 60% of malware distribution. So it kind of talks to how the web and the website specifically are still like the #1 distribution mechanism for things like drive-by downloads.
And that's pretty much it that I want to share. It was this main key points that I want to share with you guys. And the one that I really want you to think about and do your homework now is about start with the asset list. There's a lot to do when you think about website management. There's a lot to do when you think about security deployment. But to start, I want to think about the asset list. If you can create the asset list for your site, start by that. And probably on the next webinars, we'll be adding more and more to it.
What might be interesting is maybe we'll see kind of who's listening, and maybe they can send us their information, and we can take a look at it. I mean, we're not talking complicated, right? We're talking maybe a simple spreadsheet, or maybe just some basic questions. And then if it's valuable and we've seen the same information over and over again, we'll share more information on how to kind of continue from that.
When you think about complex security, will fail in very complex ways. When you do things simple, they just work.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. I mean, I think this is great. I think the other homework I would add is that we encourage everybody to go and read the report and ask us any questions and share it and get that information out, because for us, it's all about education and awareness. And then I want to kind of dive a little bit on maybe ways to think of security. How do I take the information that Daniel just shared and make something actionable out of it, or how should I be thinking about security? I guess in the first place I always like to start is kind of security is a continuous process, right? It's not a static state, and I know this is challenging. Absolutely, it's a continuous process, and it's hard, right? Because as a business owner, you always have challenges. Marketing is a continuous process. Sales is a continuous process. Well, guess what? Security is no different. How you update your design is the same as how you update your security, because the threats continue to evolve.
Think about creating a site and not writing any content.
Exactly. Like, I created a website. Yeah. No pricing changes, no product changes, no changing to the demographics or your audiences and personas. Same thing. And the other thing to think about is that our attack surface is much larger than the specific application that we're running, whether it's WordPress, Joomla, whatever the case may be. And in fact, it's more complicated. Like you look at, it's not just about the environment in which it sits, but it's also the environment in which and how you engage the web, right? We see this in PCI, for instance.
Yeah. PCI is really interesting because PCI is focused on e-commerce, sites that pass credit card data. And when you go to the PCI requirements, they cover everything. They talk about your physical security, they talk about your networking, they talk about your servers, and they talk about your applications. And they also talk about how you connect to them.
Your habits.
So even your laptop that connects to the CDE, which is the credit card data environment, has to be on compliance as well. And everything has to be secure because it's a chain in terms of security. If one chain breaks, you break the chain.
And I think that's the point, right? And I think that's an important thing for every website owner to understand is that everything's interconnected, right? You may have the best configuration at the server level or maybe at the application level, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're secure locally. Maybe you're running a Windows XP box with no antivirus, and you spend the evening surfing God knows what websites, doing God knows what, right? And then, of course, you wake up in the morning, and it's like the gift that keeps on giving. And so I think a good way to think about this is kind of like a five-pronged approach, right? So we always talk about, obviously we want to protect. And in security, it's funny, we always have this debate between protection and detection, which one is better than the other. And we like to think of it as all-encompassing. Yeah, it's both. It's not one or the other. So, how are you protecting your environment? How are you detecting in the event the protection fails or some other indicator occurs that may lead you to know that something's happening, just because we just saw how complex that chain is. And then, of course, what's going to be your response solution for this? And this is, I think, very common in the security world, and it's becoming more common in the website world. But we like to extend that and include things like maintenance administration. And the reason we emphasize this is because for the everyday website owner, they don't necessarily place any emphasis on this. We talked about this, so the 5-minute install, and nobody really talks about maintenance administration because it's not sexy. It doesn't generate sales. You know what I mean? But then we also talk about best practices. Things like, hey, every user that comes to the website is an administrator role. Well, I highly doubt they're all administering that website, right? Think of things like least privileged and defense in depth. I think those are really important.
The fact that in terms of operating system security, we've been 20 years of that.
Absolutely.
Moving it better. Nobody logs in. I hope nobody logs into your Linux surface root. You log in as a user. Yeah. If you need to run administrator commands, you type sudo, you do sudo, you become root. Yeah. Now, when you go to WordPress, I see every single user login as admin, even with a different username, but you've added
administrator role. Well, and you got to think, right? Like you said, we've been at it for 20 years or more in some instances. But when you look at how young the web ecosystem is, specifically open source CMSs like the Drupals and the Joomlas and the WordPresses, it's fundamentally different. You know what I mean?
I usually joke that the current state of CMSs, how people use them, it's kind of like the Windows 95, where everybody's the administrator, everybody runs in the kernel. Yeah. We just have to change this mindset. So I think more about.
And I think a good way to start with that is, we need to really stop looking at technology as that silver bullet or that easy button. It's like if I just install this plugin or if I just install these 10 things, I'm safe, I'm secure. It's not necessarily like that, right? Because security is a lot more complex and involved process. It's people, process, and technology working together harmoniously to get the information out.
We clean a lot of websites, like I saw. In the majority of them, have a security plugin installed, a security module.
All of them do, yeah.
Or a few of them running.
Yeah.
And they still get hacked. It's because the webmaster just thought about, maybe if I install these 3 plugins, I will fix my security. But they forget about the process, the people, everything else that goes around security.
I always like to joke, right? It's like going and buying a piece of hardware, firewall, and putting it into my network and saying, hey, I bought this firewall, I put it into my network, I plugged it in, I turned it on, and I left, and I said, I'm secure. Yeah, you allow everything in the world. You haven't configured it. You haven't done anything.
Allow all
rule in there. You're like, I don't understand. All you've essentially done is put a very fancy door with the doors wide open.
We had a user a few years back that he bought a plan. didn't add his site,
Didn't access,
didn't configure anything,
didn't communicate with us. He just purchased.
and said, but I'm still getting hacked. I mean, look at his account, he didn't do anything. Well, but I bought it your service. I'm like, you have to use it.
Buying, using, and configuring are fundamentally different, right? And so we like to remind everyone that security is not a do-it-yourself project. Contrary to what the platform you're using and what they're communicating, it just isn't. And we're seeing this more and more. And I think this data accurately reflects that, saying, hey, it definitely is not. And so here at Sucuri, what we focus on is providing a comprehensive package where we work in conjunction with the website owners. It's not a matter of come to us and you never have to think about security. It's work with us. Let us be your complementary source, and we'll provide you 3 core pieces of it.
If any company tells you otherwise, run.
They're lying. Yeah. If somebody says we will keep you 100% secure and you have to do absolutely nothing, they're full of shit, right? It's not going to happen, right? Because it's a collaborative process. We can do a lot of stuff, but we can't do everything. And so we'll provide protection where we're trying to mitigate exploitation attempts against vulnerabilities. We have a continuous monitoring or detection engine that's looking for potential indicators of compromise. And then we also provide a professional incident response team where we'll go in and address the actual issue.
Our goal is to give you all the tools you need
Absolutely.
to have a secure site.
The tools and the team.
Yes, of course. And if you install them, you configure them, and we will help you configure, we'll help you install them. Then
We just require communication. You know what I mean? And there has to be some level of understanding from the website owner itself. And so with that, a reminder that we're providing a discount for anybody that's coming to up to 20% through Friday. And if you have any questions, I'd like to turn it over to you, Kristen, and see if we can help answer anybody's burning questions.
We have a lot of burning questions, so we'll give a few to you so that you can respond. So first, let's go to this one. How is it that my hosting company was unable to detect my site being hacked, but I and Google was able to locate it? Even after the hosting doing a site test run, they were still unable to detect it.
Yeah, the first thing is that hosts are not security companies. They know hosting really well.
Absolutely.
They do not know security really well, especially when you go deeper to the website. They're not an antivirus company that can scan all these things. So them missing a malware or missing an issue, that's actually common, right?
And a lot of them actually use server-level scanners like ClamAV.
It won't find a lot of the malware.
Absolutely. They'll find server-level malware. They won't necessarily find web-based malware, which is kind of why companies like ours exist. With that being said, we have to remember the intent of organizations. So for instance, a host. A host's intent is, from a security standpoint, is for the perimeter and their environment, which is why they provide you an account. One of the biggest challenges that hosts have is, how do we address the end user problem? Because if I give you an account and I allow you to do anything you want because that's what you paid us for, how do I address that problem? It's been a long time since we've seen mass compromises in shared hosts. What we see is compromises in accounts on shared hosts. So I purchase an account on Bluehost, and I install 150 different sites on there, and then I get infected. So in terms
That's not Bluehost's fault.
That's not Bluehost's fault.
Because they give you the physical security, they give the server security, they give the space. What happens within your space is your responsibility. Never push the blame to somebody else.
Absolutely.
It's kind of like, for example, if you have a desktop on your network and you are on Comcast and you have a virus on your desktop, that's not Comcast's fault.
You don't blame Comcast and be like, ah,
they're just a provider, give you the network and the bandwidth.
And in terms of the specific question on why couldn't they detect it, we have to stop thinking in absolutes, right? Security is not an absolute. And so, for instance, it depends. What was the infection? So, for instance, if Google detected it as SEO spam, we just talked about SEO spam, and we talked how difficult it is to detect. A lot of these organizations, again, focus on the system, the administration, providing you the environment. They're not security companies. They're not designed to target this stuff. And Google's resources dwarfs everyone else's, right? And remember, we talked about conditional payloads. Malware specifically designed to target Google. So Google may see something that nobody else is going to see.
Yeah. And a lot of malware tries to hide.
Absolutely.
They are heavily encoded, heavily obfuscated. So,
and I can assure you that the $3.99 you paid that month is not paying enough overhead to provide you the security services that you might have been expecting. Might have been unaware of, but are expecting nonetheless because of just not knowing. So with that, Kristen, what's your next question?
All right, next question is, if you had any insight into the percentage of hacks that you found were targeted versus those that were more automated.
Can you ask the question one more time?
If you had any idea of the percentage of the hacks that happened in Q1 were targeted hacks, meaning targeted to a particular business or website, or how many were just automated from the platforms and plugins being targeted?
Yeah, that's actually a very good question. So we're going to provide more information in the future on attacks and how they happen. But for those that attended the last webinar where we talked about how hacks happen, we would say that greater than 95% of the attacks we see are automated. Very rarely do we see targeted attacks, and those targeted attacks are usually either a big brand or a big enterprise. It's very rarely
or somebody that has a grip against you.
Somebody that's pissed off. So like for instance, Sucuri, we have a lot of targeted attacks because a lot of black hats don't like us for a variety of reasons. But I can assure you that a majority of the websites and their owners out there don't suffer from targeted attacks. Most of them are, hey, for instance, Tintam is a perfect example.
They're vulnerability based. Yeah. The attacker has one vulnerability they can exploit, like Tintam, or a collection of vulnerabilities. Most of them have multiple vulnerabilities. They have Tintam, Rabbit Slider, Rabbit Forms, whatever. They have a big list. And they go against every site they can, trying all of them.
Yeah, and they'll build crawlers, and they'll have a crawler.
So even if you're protected against the top 99%, if they use to miss one, they're going to hack through that.
Mm-hmm. Next question, Kristen?
All right, next question is a theme hack the same as an SEO spamming? We used a theme hack and customized it, but discovered years later that the theme was not updated. What does that mean?
So ask the first part of the question again. Is this?
So the first part of the question was: is a theme hacking the theme the same as SEO spamming?
Well, hacking the theme can be used for a variety of things.
Absolutely.
They can hack your theme to inject SEO spam. They can hack your theme to drive by downloads, or even put phishing. So hacking the theme is just where the payload is hidden. Yeah. It's not the action.
It's not. Exactly. The way that we're thinking about it incorrectly. So whether they hack the theme or they hack the core or where they hack the plugin, it's a hack as a hack. It's what they did once they were successful, whether they distributed SEO spam or maybe they did phishing or maybe they did malware, then they took some action, a distribution of something, regardless of what they actually hacked. The theme just happened to make sense because they probably adjusted the function file or the header file or the footer file, and it would just load with every time the theme loads.
And there's lots of malware that even hides on htaccess, which before WordPress loads, or they even hack your Apache instance
so
and modify the miners.
Right.
So it's before you can even see what's going on a PHP level or the WordPress level.
Yeah. So I think the important thing there to take away is that SEO spam is the result of what they did once they successfully compromised the environment. The same as malware distribution or phishing. It's all part of the same malware families. But it doesn't necessarily matter what they ended up hacking, whether it was theme, plugin, environment, whatever the case might be.
Okay, the next question is, when a website is compromised, in your experience, does the attacker routinely log in to install additional software, manage it, create other users, etc., or is this an automated process done strictly through bots or other means?
It's mostly automated. A lot of the malware, when they do, for example, if you look even at the Rabbit Forms, Rabbit Slider, and Tintam, the first thing they do is upload a backdoor. And from there is where they actually do the compromise. Through the backdoor, they inject the payloads to SEO spam or drive-by downloads. But generally, the first step is always a backdoor.
Yeah,
as users, whatever they have to do.
The thing I would add to that is that while the attacks themselves are automated, I think you could also say that attackers do have a tendency to install either users or plugins or themes, but the fundamental difference here is that they don't necessarily do it manually, they automate it. So it's the same exact thing. So we've seen attackers where they'll log in through, say, a platform's admin panel, and then we can see in the logs where immediately within like half a second, they've already modified the post and they've modified this. That's automated, right? You don't see somebody clicking that fast. It's just practically impossible.
Yeah, the majority of them, when you look, they have thousands of websites to hack.
Absolutely.
It's not feasible for them to do manually one by one.
Yeah. So they're mostly done automated, and yes, they do install users, they do install plugins, they do make configuration changes, but again, all automated.
Okay, and then we're going to take our last question, and it is that most clients don't want to pay for security management. What do we do?
We wait till they get compromised, and then they'll pay.
No, not really. But you can start with the simple ways, like, for example, the asset management.
Yeah.
You can do a lot of this stuff for free if you want to pay. You can start with the asset management, track on a spreadsheet. You can install mod security, which is open source and free on your server. And you can install Snort, which is another IDS. You can do a lot of this stuff for free. You can do monitoring with the free open source OSSEC. It's a lot of stuff you can be doing for free if you know how to do it. If you are technical enough, you understand how to manage your server, you understand how to install and configure and keep mod security updated, then you're fine. You don't have to pay for it. You can do it yourself.
Absolutely.
But if you are not technical enough and you don't know how to do these things, if you try, you make mistakes, and you probably make things even worse.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a bit facetious when I say wait till they get compromised, but that is actually the reality. There are a lot of things they can do. They can go and they can read articles, and they can configure all these tools, but the fact is a lot of organizations aren't going to do that. They're not going to invest in that time. So there has to come a balance. The organization has to weigh the risk and say, okay, I'm not going to pay. In my experience, where I found it is, at least when we talk to end users over on websites, they usually recognize the value of it once they feel the pain. It's very difficult to convey to them the impact of that if they haven't felt it themselves. Oh, I've had a website for 10 years and I've never been hacked. Well, the landscape has changed a lot in 10 years.
If you own a house and something breaks, if you're handy and you know how to do stuff, you can go and fix yourself. You do great. If you're like me, you have to hire someone because every time I tried, I caused chaos.
You make it worse. I had to buy a second part. Yeah.
I spend money and time doing, and then I have to spend money and time hiring someone to fix.
And remember, right? It's not a static process. It's not a static phase. It's a continuous process. So, configuring the tools and applying the configuration hardening is but one piece of the pie. Now you have to stay ahead of all the threats and continue to make the changes to the configuration as the environment changes. So, don't pay if you don't like, and that's fine. And then hopefully it will work out perfectly. If not, you'll find yourself in a predicament where you'll be suffering a lot of anxiety and stress because of an action that could have been addressed proactively. So with that, no more questions right now, right, Kristen?
That was our last question. So that brings us to the close of our webinar. I want to thank everyone for their participation. Are you guys going to go to Twitter and take some more questions?
Yeah, for sure. We're always on Twitter. So come ask the hashtag #AskSucuri. We'll continue to answer the best we can. And like Kristen said, we'll be responding to all the questions the best we can here in the next couple of days. Be mindful as Daniel and I actually responding, so it just might take us a little bit of time.
Yes. And also, we want to remind everyone about the 20% off promo code, HackReportQ1, which will be valid until Friday. And just keep a lookout for the recording of this email. And I'm sorry, keep a lookout for the recording of this webinar in your email, as well as the answer to any unanswered questions. Thank you, and have a great day.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.